Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Rick Callaway, and we're going to talk about insurance. And if you are not awake yet, the insurance world is in a wonderful, chaotic state right now. So I'm very happy to have Rick on and try and explain to us what exactly is going on with insurance in this crazy world we live in. So Rick, glad to have you.
My pleasure. Glad to talk about insurance. Still pays all my bills.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to getting to insurance.
Well, this is, I don't know, somewhere around my fourth or fifth career. I started out owning and operating restaurants. I've got a degree in diesel technology. I was a diesel mechanic until California shut down road construction and I was out of a job again. So then I went to work for an electrical contractor, ran that operation for a while. Then Westinghouse used to have an alarm company in the state of California years ago. They reached out and said, "Hey, you want to do this stuff for us in California?" I said, "Sure." So I ran the state of California for a while, and ADP learned late in the game that not ADP, Westinghouse learned California was different than running the business everywhere else. So they lasted, well, approximately a year. I've been trying to reach out to home office, say, "Hey, we need to meet. I got to figure out what we're gonna do for marketing and hiring and all that kind of fun stuff." They said, "Oh, can you come read the new Western muckety muck at the airport with me?" And I go, "Sure." He said, "Oh, we're closing this division. Here's your final picture. Can you take your lease car back to the leasing agency for me?" I said, "Man, I just forgot how to drive. You're going to have to take it yourself."
Wow.
So then I said, "Well, what do I know how to do? Read contracts and talk to people. Crap, that's insurance. That's a family business. I guess I got to do that." So I started off in that business doing employee benefits. And then Obamacare came in and it became much more difficult to write the insurance properly. So I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to do property and casualty." So I started that, and every day I learned something new. Like I just told you, I write everything from an apartment building to a space station and everything in between. I focus mostly now on property stuff. I'm moving into manufacturing and breweries because I like a cold beer every now and then. But
there you go.
Here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the insurance world, particularly in California.
California is probably in the worst state of insurance I've ever seen it in. And that's like the perfect storm. One, we've got all these natural disasters happening. And then our wonderful government regulations kicked in and are making it difficult. They have one issue that's causing the carriers to leave rapidly. And every insurance company purchases what's called reinsurance. They insure first million, 2 million, whatever the number is. Just like when the towers went down, there was all those layers of insurance. And in every state except the wonderful state of California, they're allowed to charge that fee to the consumer, as they should be. It's the cost of insurance. So for years, they've been eating that cost, and reinsurance costs have been jumping through the roof. And these guys are saying, "We can't eat it anymore. Either you give us some relief or we're leaving." And the state figured, "Oh, we got them. They got to sell insurance here." Well, State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, Farmers, and I can't think of, AAA, I believe, closed all their offices. They're all leaving the state. And now the state is going, "Go, we got to help." So a year ago, 2023, the governor wrote an executive order telling the insurance carrier they need to do insurance commissioner, they need to do some things to help out. They need to make the regulations easier. They need to give people the renewal rates they need and things like that. So that was that was signed September 2023.
A year ago.
We're in 2024, right? It was supposed to be emergency legislation. The only thing that they've done is, they're really happy about this. "We've made it easier for you to submit your forms online." They're not going to be handled any faster, but they're going to be submitted. That hasn't done anything to relieve people of the interest rates. The rates they need. And since there's more property homeowners than there are commercial property owners. They're focusing on, the property owners. But what they forget, as most politicians, they don't really understand much about business. The apartment buildings that people live in, those rates are going up, and guess who has to pay that? The guy that lives in the apartment. So those rates keep going up. So they need to take care of it, both on the personal line side and on the commercial lines. And the first thing, it seems pretty easy to me, say, you can charge for the reinsurance. So then they'd
Hello.
say, let's say, okay, we'll stay around for a while. But then we've got all the wildfires that really mucked up the works. But that, the insurance companies can't do that. And then one of the other things that the insurance companies have asked for, they want to do catastrophic modeling, which says we expect there to be 10 fires and burn down 1 million acres. And so it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to replace that. So that's what you're going to charge you for your insurance premium. That's rather simplified, but there's more involved. But what they used to do is use historic rates. Well, we've seen in the past that this didn't happen and this didn't happen. But when all these catastrophes are going on, they've got to figure out, you can't run a business and, not make money. You got to be able to cover the cost of claims. And unfortunately, from what I've seen doing this for multiple years, the carriers like Farmers, State Farm, and Farmers were driven by marketing people. They go, we'll just get market share. We'll get market share. We'll get market share. And they got market share. I'm doing all of these State Farm and apartments and stuff, and they're probably underpriced by maybe 40 to 60%.
Whoa.
So consumers have a false sense. So if you're that far underpriced, you start getting claims. Where's the money to pay for these things? So
yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, so that's their problem. And so I'm, and I sent out the white paper that I wrote explaining this to the consumers that are going to get bills instead of being, well, I just did one. It's in San Francisco, and San Francisco is really tough to write because the replacement costs are approximately $600 a square foot, which is a pretty big number. But I just did one in San Francisco. It was just a little 2-unit condo building. It had been priced with State Farm for probably 10 years at $2,300.
Oh yeah, reasonable.
Yeah, and I was trying to, how can this price stay the same all the time? It doesn't make sense. So I started asking questions. Well, if you're with if you're with State Farm, every year they give you a discount for being with them for so long. So they may increase the building value, but they're giving you a little bit of a decrease, so the rent stays stable. So you're getting a false sense of security. You go, God, that's only going to cost $2,300. So I re-rated it. The building was undervalued. The real value came out at replacement cost came out at, I believe, $3.2 million. It had been at $2.5 million. It's about $700,000 underinsured, and the new premium was $7,500.
Wow, triple.
Immediately, the guy goes, "Are you sure about this?" I go, "Remember the paper that I sent you? That's what's happening." And unfortunately, all of this stuff is going into what's called the excess and surplus lines market. We have what's called admitted carriers and not admitted carriers. And admitted carriers are your common, State Farm, Farmers, Travelers, whatever. And the non-admitted carriers, most of them are actually larger than some of the admitted carriers. But what non-admitted carrier is they do not wish to comply with all the rules and the filings that the state of California requires. It's the only disadvantage to the consumer is there's called a fund, guaranteed insurance cost fund. And if so-and-so goes out of business and there's claims, this fund will pay for those claims. But in reality, insurance companies are like everybody else. They can't afford a bad rap. So if Joe Insurance Company starts to go under, some other insurance company is going to come buy them up, take all that risk and keep them going under, because taking that company over is better than getting a bad name. So, don't put any business over here. It's going to go in the tank. So the risk of not having a claim paid is minimal. And for insurance brokers like me, if you buy an admitted carrier thing, they've got I call them throw-ins. They have all these things that they automatically add into the policy. Some of them good, some of them useless. They look good, but on a non-admitted carrier, I have to ask, I want building coverage, I want business income and coverage, I want what's called ordinance of law coverage, which is if a building was built a long time ago, I go to replace it. The codes for buildings have changed, so it's going to cost me more to replace it. And then in most cities, if half of your building burns down, they're not going to let you just build that half of the building. They're going to make you knock down the whole thing and rebuild it. And if you don't have what's called this ordinance of law coverage, you're not going to get the value of that undamaged portion of the building. But I have to ask for all the specific coverages. And then I have to read every quote that comes in. I go, well, I wanted this, and I wanted this. I go, no, I wanted this value, or I wanted this, to make sure everything that I want is in there. I don't worry about the throw-ins that aren't really going to affect, one of my clients. I just make sure his bases are covered. If his building burns, theft, somebody gets hurt, general liability, slip and fall. So that's the state of insurance in California. Regulations need to be fixed. Carriers need to be able to charge what they have to. And unfortunately, they haven't let them increase a little bit each year. So now when they get the increase, instead of increasing 5%, they're probably going to increase their rates 25%. But that needs to happen so that the market can level out and we can actually keep insurers in the state. And it's competition. If I got 10 insurers vying for a policy, I've probably got good opportunity of getting insurance. If I've got 3 carriers, then I've got none. And a bad issue right now is there's something called habitational coverage, for lack of a better term. The claims that are coming in now is somebody finds mold, sues the landlord. They think the building is too loud and they sue the landlord. They're all suits against the landlord for things that they think are wrong with the building. The tenant can't remember to call the landlord and say, hey, I got a leaky sink. They wait a year and say, hey, there's mold in my place. Well, of course there's mold. The sink's been running for a year. But the attorney jumps on it and sues the landlord. That coverage is excluded on every single non-admitted carriers that I know of so far. I'm working with Lloyd's of London right now. I've got some investors to put a program together to cover just that piece of the business, because that's where the lawsuits are coming from. And until the lawyers find something else to go after us on, that's their target. I had one client, poor woman, she had 40 units, I believe it was. And some lawyer went around and knocked on every door and said, are you unhappy with this, that? And of course, oh yeah, I'm unhappy. So he sued her for $20,000 per unit.
Oh, man.
$20,000 doesn't sound, it was only 20,000. Yeah, but there's 40 of them. That's $800,000.
Yeah.
So, that was a huge cost. And if you can't recoup it from insurance, you got to recoup it out of your own pocket. I've had the most ridiculous suit I ever had. One of my guys, he's a property manager and he also owns property. He had a 2-story building, six units up, 6 units on the first floor. And unfortunately, the top floor when he bought it was relatively empty. So he remodeled all those units first. Then he went down to the bottom floor, moved the people up to the second floor, rent free until it was done, remodeled their units, didn't increase the rent. Got sued by one of the tenants after she moved back into her apartment because she was inconvenienced for a year. I can't remember the exact legal wording, but that's ridiculous. I gave you free rent while I did this. I gave you a brand new apartment, and you're going to sue me because you had to walk up and down stairs for a year.
Oh my gosh!
As I mentioned,
are there any insurance where they cover the ADA claims?
That's actually covered under employment practices liability of all places, because there's what's called third party claims. So as a property owner, you probably don't have that coverage. As a commercial person, you probably, if you're a business, you have that coverage. And I've researched that. I've spent a ton of researching that because at a bar, that brand new bar built, he put in a long bar, put in a cutout section for, so you could wheel up there in your wheelchair. I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I knew all about that stuff. And it was 3/4 inches too high, and the inspector wouldn't pass it. And since it was like one nice sheet of redwood, it was a pain in the neck to rip it out and try to replace it. So that got taken care of. And then we had an ADA claim because somebody else thought it was still too high. The claim
Oh
got
my gosh.
dismissed. The claim got dismissed. And fortunately, we had employment practice liability. And that's when I learned that's where that coverage sits. Like I tell folks, well, how come you know all this stuff? I said, well, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 74 years old. I'm not the least bit smarter than any of you guys. I just already made the mistake, and I try not to make them twice.
Employment liability coverage.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's something that property owners should know about, because particularly everybody in the retail and restaurant business are getting sued right and left, although those lawsuits seem to be fading a little bit, I hope. But they'll probably be back.
California has more lawyers per capita than any other state in the union, unfortunately. And we're graduating more every year, and they've got to make a living somehow. And if they don't take a corporate job, then they become a litigator. And some of them, I'm not particular. I fight with lawyers all day long over claims and wordings in their contracts. But there was a lawyer in Sacramento who used to look online at restaurants. God, it doesn't look like I can get in there. So he could go down there, couldn't get in, file a lawsuit. He had God knows how many lawsuits. Then he started paying other people to do the same thing. And he finally got caught because all he started doing was looking on Google, filing the claim. And I don't know how somebody found out, but he ended up losing his license and not being able to do that anymore. So somebody caught up with him. Eventually those things get put on the right track.
Yeah. No, I heard one guy, they finally caught him on tax fraud. So he's sitting in his house now and not able to go out and start suing people. But yeah, that's a crazy, crazy world.
Yeah. So, I understand. I can't. If I'm in a wheelchair now, so before I go somewhere, I take a look. Is that going to be a problem getting in there? Yeah, I'm not going to go there. Or say I've got to go to my CPA or whatever, and he's up on the second floor. I say, hey, Bill, can you meet me downstairs? Yeah, no problem. No need for me to sue him. I got my business done. He took care of me. Whatever happened to this thing called common sense? Oh, I think that got lost. It's not very common anymore.
No such thing as common sense anymore. Yeah, all gone. So what's happening worldwide? You were saying that things are better off worldwide in the insurance world.
Yeah, I did my own television show 2 months ago, and I had a broker from Lloyd's of London on, and we were discussing, when I was talking about California, he goes, oh, we don't have that problem here. There's one, apparently there's not as many lawyers, and two, they've got a different outlook on life. My brother insures a large company out of France. Everybody's heard of NIA Post and all, the mailing guys. He insures his company out of France, which controls 2% of the marketplace. Pitney Bowes has 90%. But he's talking to him about. He says we don't have any of those kind of claims. We discuss the issue if they need time off or if they think there's something wrong. We don't get sued because we don't need that coverage here in France. We don't have any of those kind of claims. And people in Europe seem to use that thing called common sense and discuss. Say, you know what? I think my office is a mess because you got carpenters banging walls next to me. Can we do something about it? Yeah, I'll take care of it. They don't take an adversarial approach to everything. They take how can we work this problem out? I need this, you need this, somewhere in the middle, we can probably get this taken care of. The only big issue they have going on is in shipping stuff on boats from Europe to, say, California or whatever. Most of those big vessels, carry containers on them, but they have the things in the containers. One, they have to be careful they don't get destroyed during packaging, but most of all, most of that stuff in a container has to be at a certain spot by a certain time. And if not, you're in violation of the contract. And nobody tells the big guy upstairs not to have a storm right in their pathway. So they get delayed, and they've got a claim. I have a client in Hawaii. I don't know why they're in Hawaii. I haven't figured it out yet. I guess because the owner of the company lives there. But they manufacture battery backup systems with batteries. And you've probably picked up a battery in your life. They're rather heavy.
Oh yeah.
They were shipping, I'm not sure how many units that they'd built from Hawaii to the States. During COVID, got stuck offshore, couldn't get in, couldn't unload the ships. So they ended up having to put that product on an airplane, remanufacture them, put them on an airplane, and fly them to the States to get them there on time.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So it must have, the violation of the contract must have been pretty expensive to pick up the extra expense of sending these things on an airplane, because it couldn't have been cheap. I have no idea how much it is. So they're writing a lot of what's called marine coverage, because there's a lot of issues coming up with shipping out, shipping in. And I guess the contracts are getting more severe for, I need this by Monday or whatever. So the penalties for it being late are becoming more severe. So this coverage is being written up. Now, we don't have a lot of them sinking or anything like that. There's not that kind of issue. But it's supply.
Storms.
Right.
Yeah. Storms are getting worse now.
Right. So they end up in the middle of the ocean with a bunch of ships not able to go anywhere.
Then you end up with COVID and off you go. You're stuck.
Yeah. So they're still catching up from those past claims, but that seems to be their biggest thing, because Europe does business in Europe, and they've already, they already settled things amicably. We'll discuss this and figure it out. But when they're shipping stuff to the States, they have to worry about it. And we have shippers here shipping stuff from the States to Europe. They purchase marine coverage in case, the container falls off the ship or whatever, to pick up those things. But going from Europe to the States, they're more worried about violating a contract, so they write the coverage. But they don't have issues with, property coverage like we do, general liability coverage. It goes up and down like everywhere, but they seem to have it much more under control than we do. But it was a pretty interesting discussion.
Yeah, no, I mean, what common sense could do for us.
Yeah, make life a lot.
And maybe a few less lawyers.
Yeah, they might have to go out of business and get real jobs. I mean, the biggest argument I have with the lawyers, and they don't like the response, is they, in all of their contracts for property leases, they say, you, Mr. Tenant, will have all risk insurance, and we will carry all risk insurance. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen an all risk policy written. Because they have what's called special form that picks up everything except flood and earthquake, but it's not an all risk policy. So I tell Mr. Attorney, I need this revised because my client's not going to sign it the way it is. And I said, no, by the way, all these contracts that you signed and you had your tenant sign, you're all in violation of the contract. Because neither one of you has that coverage.
There's no such thing.
There's no such animal. It's a slang. Then they said, well, we want all risk, not including flood and earthquake. I go, where I went to school, if it doesn't have those things in there, then by definition, it's not all risk.
It's not covering everything.
Right. You need what's called special form. And another thing that I argue with them about is that, I can't remember the exact wording, but basically says you're responsible for everything that happens around the property. And I have that changed to say every insurable risk around the property will be responsible for. If somebody gets raped on my front stairs, I've got no control over that. Why should I be liable? But by the contract was written, I could theoretically get sued.
Wow. Oh, the insurance world. Well, Rick, this has been very I was going to say fun. It's been a little crazy, I think.
A little
But
scary.
if people want to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
You can find me at rcallaway@acrisure.com or go on LinkedIn and look me up. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm so old, I've been in there since LinkedIn started. I don't know how long ago that was.
Wow.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's a ways back. You
Yeah.
were original founder of LinkedIn, sort of.
Yeah, pretty much. So just
All
type
right.
my name in, Rick Callaway, and this wonderful face of mine will pop up and you can just reach out to me there.
That would be great. You obviously know your business. So any of you that are having trouble finding insurance, call Rick. That's my recommendation for sure.
You know, I've
All
got
right.
one recommendation
Oh,
for them. If you're having issues with insurance, get to a broker early and don't go to 10 different brokers, because that only makes things worse, because an insurance company will only provide a quotation to the first broker that gets them a submission. And if they see a bunch of submissions coming in, they go, we don't want to screw with this because nobody has control of this thing.
oh, interesting. One broker, one property, or however you want to say it. Don't go crazy.
Yeah, it's not like shopping at Costco and all the different stores to get your best value. Some brokers have access to some different markets, but most of us have the access to all the same markets. I happen to work for a company that's 9th largest in the world, so I can get to just about anybody. But I've still only certain places in California write the best coverage. So if your broker knows what he's doing, he's going to find you the coverage.
You don't need to go to 5 different brokers.
No, because they're going to go to the same place.
Yeah. So if it's inexperienced broker, you're in bad shape anyway.
That's correct. If you want somebody that's been doing it for a long time, reach out and I'll take care of you.
Sounds like you are the man. So Rick, thank you very much.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.